Welcome to Ignite Your Confidence with Karen Laus. That's me. I've got 3 leadership lessons for you today. Let's jump right in. Speak up. Stop looking for permission. And first of all, I want to address any self-doubt, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, feelings of judgment, fear of rejection, wanting to have people's approval, wanting to do the right thing, you name it. It all kind of falls into the same category. But there were so many times that I doubted myself and I didn't speak up. And I even was kindly and lovingly coached by an amazing boss that I had years ago who said, "We want to hear more from you. You have things to say. Speak up in meetings," and that kind of thing. I don't want you to have to be in a situation where your boss tells you that. Just do it. If you feel like you have something to say, just say it. Now, I do think it's important to have at least some type of filter, some type of judgment around when is it appropriate to speak up and that kind of thing, but don't hold back because of doubt and fear. I specifically remember being passed over for something many years ago. I remember I was in this performing group and we were doing some staging, and the director just looked out at the crowd of us. There were a lot of people. I was in a cast of 150 people, and the director just said, "Who wants to do this reading in the show?" And I didn't have a star role. So I wanted to do that, but I waited too long. It was probably 2 seconds too long. And one gal just went like this, and he chose her because she was visible. She went for it, and that made all the difference. So think about times in your life when you have not spoken up. And I'm guessing that there are many of those times. Whatever the situation is, remember you have important things to say. The world needs to hear what you have to say. Your voice is important. Please keep that in mind when you are worried or afraid of what people will think. Just remember what other people think is none of your business. Now, I know that's easier said than done. One thing that you can do as an exercise related to self doubt is find 5 people in your corner, 5 people that you trust and that care about you, and ask them for positive attributes in what they see in you. Strengths, attributes, anything positive that you could learn from them, because frankly, it's really helpful because we can't be outside of ourselves. It's really helpful to hear from other people and see what they see. And you'll also start noticing themes. So that's one exercise that you can do to get better at speaking up, because that's going to help you feel more confident in yourself. And the more you do it, one baby step after another, as I'm sure many of you have already practiced, each time you do it, it feels easier, and it just gets, yeah, it gets easier. So definitely speak up. Don't ask for permission. Number 2, ask directly for what you want. Oh boy, I've done this really well and I've done it really poorly. I'm going to tell you about the poorly time. I was working for a wonderful company years back, and I remember being asked to be on the senior leadership team, and I was very excited. Thought, "Oh, this is so awesome." Well, I didn't have a director or above title. Not that titles really mattered at this company at all, and yet it was important to me. Now, instead of just directly saying, "I want to be a director. I know everybody in here is director level and above. That's my goal, and I want to know how to get there. Can you help me?" I did not do that, and I regret that. What I did instead was do sort of it's not sort of, I did the passive thing. I made some comment like, "Well, everybody else is director or above. What does that look like for me?" And I didn't get a very direct answer either, understandably so. And it was a new thing in general at that time, trying to put some things together with a semi startup. And it definitely did not go well for me, because then, of course, I was asking about it later. I was really disappointed at my review that it wasn't brought up, but I never asked directly. I wish that I could have gone back almost a year before that and said something, but I learned from that, and I hope that you can too. The first step, though, is to get clear on what you actually want. Because when you don't know what you want, it's going to be hard to get there. Get clear, do some soul searching, figure out what is either your next step or what is the dream that you have that you want to go after. Because I can tell you this, another bonus lesson here. For me anyway, going after what I wanted when I knew what it was a lot easier to get, and I often did get it. Most people in my life have said, you've been so lucky. And I just have jumped at opportunities, and we'll talk more about that in the third one. But make sure that you get clear on what you want. And one other formula that I will offer you is called the 3 Ds. And if you have been following me at all, you've probably heard this before. I remember feeling stuck in a job for almost 2 years, and I was getting really annoyed that I could not figure out what I wanted to do. I felt like a racehorse behind the gates, ready to go. I had all this energy and enthusiasm and passion, but I couldn't figure out what I actually wanted to do. Well, did some soul searching, a lot of it, and finally realized, why am I not just following my dream of being a speaker? And that's when the 3 Ds came into play. And I have to do a shout out to my friend Jeannie Grabowski that also was part of that birth, for lack of a better term. And the 3 Ds are, first of all, decide, declare, and do. Decide what you want, declare it to everybody. This is what I'm doing. This is who I am now. This is what I'm going for. And then take every action possible to get there. Number 3, leadership lesson, just say yes, and say yes quickly in parentheses. Seize opportunities. I can remember years ago when I was working as a temp, fairly new to San Francisco. I was working as a temp at the Gap, and I had been laid off. I was in their corporate office. I had been laid off at a company called GeoNexus that no longer exists. But I say that because we had a contact there that was our main client, because the Gap at that time was our client. I didn't really know her very well. Her name was Debbie Cowan. And when I was temping for this guy, I was an executive assistant, and I saw her name come up on the phone calling him. And my job was to answer his calls. I hated the job that I was in. God bless anybody that's an executive assistant. I have so much respect for you. That was not my thing. And when I saw her name, I said, oh my gosh, I have to ask her if she has any jobs because she's in HR. So I said, Debbie, hey, before I pass you over to Lewis, I want to ask. First of all, I gave her a reference. I used to work for GeoNexus. I was their HR manager, got laid off. As you know, the company folded. And I just wondered if you happen to have any jobs in HR. And would you believe that she said, actually, yes. Could you come interview tomorrow? So I did. And that's where I got my start in training. So you just never know what opportunity is going to lead to the next one. And there have been many more like that. I will share one other, and that is when I was super excited about training, but I hadn't had that much experience. I had some at the Gap, but then I was moving into another job. And at that interview, I solely focused on how much I loved training. Well, I hadn't even done that much of it, but I kept talking about how much I loved it, so much so that when they hired me, the CFO asked me if I could do a training for all of his finance managers coming in from all over the world. And of course, I immediately said yes, and then turned around and thought, how am I going to do this? So I know that sometimes, especially as women, we're hesitant because we feel like we have to be perfect and we have to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. But sometimes you just have to jump and trust yourself. And that is a great place to end, to trust yourself. Go for it. Again, these 3 leadership lessons, just to wrap up: speak up and stop looking for permission to do so. Ask directly for what you want and just say yes. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please write a review and, of course, subscribe. If you write a review, it helps other people get to find the podcast faster, and I would absolutely love to have you in my community. You too can stand out with unshakable confidence.